Hello and welcome into the KE Report. I'm your host, Shad Markwitz, and we're getting an update today on Guanajuato Silver, traded on the TSX.V under the ticker GSVR, and on the OTCQX under the ticker GSVRF. And we are joined today with the CEO of Guanajuato Silver, James Anderson. And James, it's always great getting you on the show to get an update on G Silver. And last time we talked, it was really just kind of looking at how these different four mines that you have were developing. Just for people listening in, the company produces silver and gold concentrates from the El Cubo Mine Complex, the Valenciana Mines Complex, and the San Ignacio mine. All of those in Guanajuato, which has almost a 500-year history of mining, so it's a great historic area. And then the company also has a fourth mine, the Topia mine in northwestern Durango, that produces silver, gold, lead, and zinc concentrates. So a lot going on with Guanajuato Silver. I wanted to dig into the Q1 financials that you just released a couple of weeks ago, and I'll throw it over to you, James, just to walk us through some of the key takeaways.
Thanks, Shad, for having me on again. It's always a pleasure to talk with you. Regarding Q1, which seems like a long time ago now, but nonetheless, we were very proud to be able to report record metals production. So we did about 987,000 silver equivalent ounces. So just under 1 million ounces silver equivalent for the quarter. For your listeners, just to remind them, a silver equivalent ounce is a little different for us than some of the other silver producers, which produce a lot of base metals as well. Silver equivalent for us is about 50% silver, about 40% gold, and then about 10% lead and zinc. So a very precious metal, silvery company. Other highlights for us was also record revenue. $17.8 million in revenue in the first quarter, and that was at a realized average gross price of silver of just $23.37. So we are hoping and thinking that with the higher metals prices here this quarter and into the future, that things can get better again.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Just when people think about Q1, whether it's silver or gold, the metal prices have come up substantially in Q2. So we should be looking at a lot better margin spread in Q2 for really all companies, but of course for G Silver. Now, the other thing is with the all-in sustaining cost. We were talking a little bit about this off mic, that different companies calculate it different ways. You published in this Q1 that it was around $20.19 per silver equivalent ounce. But maybe walk us through what goes into that, how you calculate it, and most importantly, what other initiatives the company are doing to continue to work on bringing costs down?
Yeah, just as a for instance, we include all of our G&A in all-in sustaining costs. Some companies do, some companies don't. And what I was saying before the interview started to you, Shad, and I'll share this with our listeners as well. A lot of people want to be able to compare all-in sustaining costs company to company directly, and it's not necessarily an apples to apples kind of comparison. It's not an IFRS measurement. And so different companies have different things within that. What I told our CFO some time ago was, well, look, let's not be Boy Scouts about it, but let's be fair to the readers and present an all-in sustaining cost that includes exploration costs, that includes transportation costs and things like that. So, I think it's a fairly fair measurement. And for us, the $20.19 is a marked improvement over our all-in sustaining cost reported in quarters from the previous year.
Well, and you've been very candid, very open about how over the last 2 years, just in talking to you about the different mines as you brought them on, that some of them needed to have some sustaining capital put into them to look at equipment, to look at different vehicles, to look at just the mine setup. And so you've been investing in these mines the last couple of years, and you're continuing to look for new equipment that continue to optimize the mining process. Can you share any of that with people listening in here, to some of the work your team has been doing to continue to optimize the different mines?
Yeah, for sure. And that's exactly right. And I appreciate the opportunity to comment on that again. Just sort of philosophically, when we started to build this silver company a few years ago from a standing start, we bought 4 mines at incredibly inexpensive prices, pennies on the dollar. But when you do buy fixer-uppers like that, well, there's a lot of money that needs to be put into it. Now, I felt that the move upward in silver would have happened 18 months ago or 2 years ago, but it didn't. And we kind of hovered around $21, $22 silver for a long time. Our mines can operate at that price, but it's very difficult to generate enough money to be able to put in the capex that was necessary to bring these mines not only back into production, but bring them back into production safely to 21st century standards and to add different capex items. So, we did raise some money just a couple months ago, some equity money. That money is going into additional capex to be able to drive production increases, but also be able to lower costs. One really good example of that is putting in a flash flotation system at our Cata plant. All of the material, all the epithermal material in the Guanajuato area does have free gold and electrum, where you've got silver and gold together, and it's difficult to get those out of solution in a flotation plant system. So these flash cells will be able to take free gold and have us recover that in concentrates. So frankly, that's working right now. We've done it in kind of a modular basis. So we've just got our first flash cell system working. I think it's too early to give you, real hard numbers about increases in recovery, but it's working at Cata, and I think it'll have a profound effect at the Cata plant and then at the El Cubo plant as well when we get around to putting those flash cells at that plant later on. Another investment that we're making currently is an ore sorting machine. There's a fair bit of low-grade material from old waste at our San Ignacio mine. We've been hand sorting that for the last, I don't know, year or so. But what we're going to be able to do is to put in an ore sorter, which is going to be a real 21st century digital kind of process to be able to find ore grade material within the large waste pile and discard the rest of the material. And what that will mean is being able to transport material the 25 kilometers to processing at a much higher grade than what we're doing right now. We figure that there will be maybe a 3 to 6 month payback period on this investment only. And we're installing that ore sorting machine right now. So by, let's say the end of July, we think that it'll be operational. So none of these things, people always think, okay, well, you're going to do that, so that should just take a day or two. Almost always these installations take certainly weeks and usually months to be able to properly put into production. But I can tell you, I think that the company has reached a real inflection point in terms of production and in terms of profitability. And I'm very excited about the future.
Well, and we haven't ever actually done this before, James, but I'd love you to just maybe speak maybe 1 minute per mine. So all four mines, give us a 1 minute snapshot of where things are at today, how it contributes to the overall makeup, and maybe what metals come out of each mine. So just like a 1 minute snapshot of each of the four mines.
Okay, cool. So, well, let's start with Topia in the north, right? So that Topia is about 1,000 kilometers away from our other Guanajuato operations. It's a little bit different for us, but when we bought the Great Panther assets, really it was sort of thrown in for free. It's very high grade. The resource grade there is about 1 kilo of silver equivalent. That's the mine that produces silver, lead, zinc, and gold in concentrates. It's been operating for about 70 years. And I don't think that, that mine is not running out of material anytime soon. The challenge is that a lot of the structures, a lot of the veins are very narrow, some of them half a meter or even 40 centimeters. But when you're dealing with 1 or 1.5 kilo equivalent grades, well, that works pretty well. The highlight for what we're doing right now in order to increase production and increase efficiencies is adding a new filter press system. This is something that we've wanted to do, frankly, for a couple of years, but have never really had the money to do it. We do now, and I think that will have an impact that we're really installing it sort of half now and half in a couple more months. But that new filter system will allow us to send much higher grade concentrates to Manzanillo, where we sell our concentrates on the coast to Ocean Partners. So I think you can look forward to seeing an impact from those changes within the next 2 months, let's say maximum. Let's go to Guanajuato. Our first mine complex that we bought, we bought El Cubo from Endeavor Silver. The plant there is bigger than the mine can answer, really. And that's always been a bit of a challenge with El Cubo. What we've done is several agreements to be able to process third-party material at the plant and therefore fill that plant to capacity. That has been working well for us for the last number of months. Whether it does into the future is kind of an open question. And therefore, we're looking around for other material, other sources of material to be able to add to the El Cubo production to be able to keep the plant operating at full capacity, which is its most efficient capacity. We have another mine called El Horcon, which is further northwest of Guanajuato. That is a 100-year-old past producer. It has surface material that we've been sending to Guanajuato for processing. So that's helped. And in the months ahead, I think you can probably look to El Pinguico. That was our very first project in the area. Again, it's a past producer. El Pinguico was actually listed on the New York Stock Exchange 100 years ago. That it was then the highest grade mine in the whole area. Well, we've been shipping to the El Cubo plant surface material from Pinguico for some time. In the months ahead, we hope to be taking some underground material from there as well. And again, it's a recurring theme, Shad, but that requires money to be able to get started, and money has been tight to come by. But now we've got kind of a runway to be able to do that. The other two mines in the Guanajuato area are San Ignacio. San Ignacio is the one where we're putting the ore sorter in, and that's out further west of Guanajuato. By road, it's about 25 kilometers to the plant at Valenciana called Cata. And then let's talk about Valenciana. We control about 4.2 kilometers of Veta Madre. Veta Madre is the mother vein. It's the big, important structure in Guanajuato that has allowed people to be mining silver and gold for 450 years. We control maybe the most important 4.2 kilometers of that. It's one of the great silver mines of human history, and it's been in production for 450 years. I always tell people that I think it will be in production for another 450 years as we continue to find more and more and more material that perhaps the Spanish in the 1700s didn't consider economic, but we certainly do. So that's a minute on each mine.
Yeah, fantastic. I think that's a nice overview. It helps listeners just kind of dial in what's going on at each of the different mining complexes. And then as far as some of that upside you were mentioning, as far as the exploration side of the business, maybe give us a little insight into how there is more to be found. There is still more blue sky at a lot of these mining complexes.
Well, there really is. We've got a fantastic, exclusively Mexican team that works with us in Mexico. Mostly mining engineers, but in terms of exploration, Ronaldo Rivera is our VP of exploration. He was for 10 years the head of Mexican exploration at Goldcorp. The man is used to dealing with much, much larger budgets than we've been able to present to him. But he's got fantastic ideas. He's very excited about really all of our mines because they have all, for different reasons, they've all been underexplored in the last 20, 30 years. I'll give you an example at Valenciana. This is something that we're drilling right now and something that we're quite excited about. There is an area that's about a kilometer long, a long strike in Veta Madre that's between two large ore chutes that have been mined in the past and that we're mining right now. But for whatever reason, people didn't very much go and explore there. Great Panther understood that this was a possibility, and they not only built an underground station to drill a number of holes, but they also tunneled about a 300-meter adit to be able to access this area for drilling, and yet they never drilled any holes there. So we're doing that right now. Success there will, I think, mean establishing new resources for us to be able to extract for many years to come in an area that's only, I don't know, maybe it's 300-400 meters away from our main Cata production shaft. So it's all great for the exploration companies to be drilling exciting exploration things, Shad, out in the middle of nowhere. Well, our exploration typically takes place hundreds of meters only away from where we can produce the material. So I think that kind of sets Guanajuato Silver apart from some of the other exploration companies.
Absolutely. You can actually monetize and put into a mine plan the ounces in the ground that you find, which is a nice advantage, especially with silver prices starting to move higher and gold prices moving higher. I think just besides us on this call, James, there's probably some other people excited about the success at Guanajuato Silver, and that's some of the key stakeholders in the company. You got a pretty impressive roster of other folks and other funds and companies that are invested in Guanajuato Silver. I'd love you just to outline some of the key ones that you think are good to have in the roster as key strategic shareholders.
Well, Fidelity is our largest shareholder. That's the Fidelity Gold and Silver Fund out of Boston. I like to joke with the fund manager there that they are very, very important for us, whereas we're not all that important to them. It's a $2 billion fund, but they like what we're doing. They like how we're growing the company, and they are extremely long-term in their view. There's a fellow named Eric Sprott that you might have heard of. He's a shareholder and wrote us a check when we first, that's Eric personally, when we first started to put El Cubo back into production. One of our key directors is Dan Oliver, and he runs a fund called Myrmikan out of Connecticut. And Myrmikan invests strictly into microcap silver and gold names. His help to be able to drive capital towards the company during this growth phase has been exceptional. I don't have the superlatives to be able to talk about it. So yeah, we get a lot of help from a lot of different people in the business. A lot of people like very much the way that we've gone about expanding the company by incrementally and opportunistically, I think, purchasing millions, tens of millions, maybe hundreds of millions of dollars worth of mining equipment and mining resources for pennies on the dollar during a downdraft. You also mentioned the price of silver, and let me comment on that. We had $21, $22 silver for several years here, with some ups and downs in between. Our mines, they're reasonably high cost mines, they're underground mines, they're narrow vein mines, and putting them back into production during this period of time has been difficult. But the change for us between $22 and $29 silver is absolutely immense. And I just, I feel that I should highlight that for your listeners. The change for us for the price of the metals is huge. Also, just recently, the Mexican peso, which had for several years been the strongest currency on planet Earth, has reversed course and lost significant value. That's really good for us. About 75% of our costs are denominated in pesos. When we have a strong peso, that's just higher costs on a per ounce, per ton basis for Guanajuato Silver. Lower peso, that's better for us, and I expect that to continue for the foreseeable future.
I appreciate you mentioning that, not just the metals price, but also how the currency plays into it with the Mexican peso. Because lowering peso is good for labor costs, and good for all the costs that you do in Mexico themselves. So very important point. And one more thing I think we should do is just give people a snapshot of what's coming down the pipeline as far as news flow, other key milestones. What do you want investors focused on, James?
Well, this quarter, as I mentioned, we had record production, record revenue in the first quarter. We'll see whether we can rival that in the second quarter. The quarter that we're in right now is we've really been focused on using some of the money that we raised in the equity round to, again, reinvest in all of the mines and, a whole bunch of the things that I've mentioned, Chad, and 40 other things that we just don't have time to talk about here today. So this quarter's an inflection point. I think that with the peso, with the new prices of the metals, and with our continuing growth quarter over quarter of production, that's a very compelling story. So I guess the other thing, we did put out a news release, I don't know, maybe a month ago, about repaying our first loan to Ocean Partners. The company has taken on some debt over the last couple of years while we've been putting these mines back into production. I'd like to straighten out the balance sheet just a little bit and pay off some of that debt, pay down some of that debt. So I think you may see additional news on that in the coming months.
All right, so a lot going on with Guanajuato Silver, growing at 4 different mines, investing in equipment, looking at optimizing processes for recovery, as well as ore sorting and using more tech in the process. You've got exploration going on, you're paying down debt, and hopefully having fatter margins with lower peso and higher metals prices. So if people want to follow along with all of this news for Guanajuato Silver, definitely click on the link below this interview. It takes you right over to the company website to their news section. James, keep us abreast of what's going on with the company. We'll get you back on soon for an update and looking forward to our next conversation.
Chad, thank you so much. Really appreciate the opportunity.